Okay, so we're diving into some really serious accusations against Sean Diddy Combs. You know, Diddy, a name that like screams music, fashion, success.
Right.
But behind this empire, there's this federal indictment, and it paints a very dark picture.
Yeah.
It alleges that there's this whole criminal enterprise going on beneath the surface.
Yeah, and this is not, just your average celebrity gossip rag.
Right.
We are talking accusations of violent crimes, arson, kidnapping, even allegations of sex trafficking.
Wow.
This indictment's a formal accusation, lays out all these charges against him, and it's based on years of alleged activities.
So we're talking about potential abuse of power, coercion, some really disturbing allegations about how Diddy allegedly used his influence and power. I mean, where do we even begin to unpack all of this?
Well, I think one of the most honestly unsettling aspects of this case revolves around these events that Diddy allegedly called freak-offs.
Freak-offs.
Yeah, freak-offs.
It's disturbing enough that the term was even used,
Right.
let alone what it allegedly points to.
And according to sources, right, these weren't just parties. Like, we're talking about alleged scenarios involving coercion, threats, even violence, often involving male sex workers.
The alleged involvement of transporting these men across state lines,
Yes.
that adds a whole other layer of legal complexity here.
Absolutely. It suggests a deliberate attempt to exploit, potentially, individuals who are more vulnerable because of their circumstances. And I think it's also crucial to remember that within all of these allegations, the issue of consent is paramount. Diddy's wealth and his status allegedly created an environment where consent may have been compromised, where these individuals may have felt pressured to participate out of fear or a sense of obligation.
It's like the indictment is saying that Diddy used his wealth and influence to manipulate these situations, control these people, and evade any type of accountability.
Exactly. It speaks to a really disturbing power dynamic that can exist
Right.
when you have someone with immense wealth and influence allegedly exploiting others.
Yeah.
Now, his legal team is fighting back. They're maintaining his innocence.
Right. Of course, they're claiming they have defenses to every single accusation. But it makes you wonder, how long could this have gone on? And why are these accusations coming out now?
It's a good question. It leads us into some of the deeper issues at play here.
Okay, it's like we're uncovering this hidden world, these accusations spanning decades, right? And what makes this all even more real is the evidence. The raids on Diddy's properties. I mean, that must have been intense.
Intense is an understatement.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking federal agents going through his homes in LA, in Miami.
Right.
And what they found is incredibly telling.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, you have guns, drugs, things you might expect.
Right, right.
But the thing that really caught everybody's attention, the thing that made headlines, was the sheer volume of baby oil they found.
Over 1,000 bottles, if you believe the reports.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah, his lawyer even confirmed it. It's like, oh yeah, there's a Costco down the street.
Right.
But 1,000 bottles? I mean, that's
Yeah, it's a lot of baby oil.
beyond a bulk discount. That feels symbolic of something much larger.
It does. It points to a pattern of behavior.
Right.
Potential system in place. It's like finding hundreds of burner phones.
Right.
It's not going to convict somebody on its own,
Right.
but it raises serious questions.
Raises serious questions. And then you add in the alleged psychological and emotional control. I mean, we can't forget about the alleged victims here.
Of course not.
The people who are saying they were manipulated, coerced for years.
This is where the human cost becomes impossible to ignore.
Yeah.
Several women have come forward alleging years of abuse, manipulation, fear.
Right.
All while Diddy allegedly used his power and influence to keep them silent.
Which begs the question, why now?
Yeah.
Why are they coming forward after all of this time?
I mean, it's never easy to speak out against someone in a position of power like that.
Right.
There's fear of retribution,
Of course.
fear of not being believed,
Yeah.
fear of facing, the full force of a legal team that is dedicated to protecting their client.
Right.
Sometimes it takes finding your own strength.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's seeing other people come forward, and that's what finally breaks the silence.
Right. And it makes you wonder how prevalent this kind of power dynamic really is. And not just in Hollywood,
Right.
but in any industry where you see this kind of power imbalance.
Absolutely. It's a systemic issue.
Yeah, yeah.
But in this particular case, the backlash against Diddy has been swift and severe, even before a trial has even taken place.
Right. I mean, talk about a fall from grace.
Yeah.
Losing his honorary degree from Howard. The mayor of New York wants his key to the city back. They even canceled Sean Diddy Combs' Day in Miami Beach.
Wow.
These aren't just symbolic gestures, though, are they?
No, not at all. These institutions are distancing themselves.
Right.
Recognizing the potential damage to their own reputations if they were to stand by him during all of this.
Yeah.
It shows a real shift, I think, in how society is viewing these types of allegations.
Right.
Especially when they involve such powerful figures.
And this isn't Diddy's first brush with the law either.
No.
He's been in legal trouble before, but he's always seemed to avoid any real consequences.
Right.
What feels different this time around?
I think the severity of these accusations is just on a different level.
Okay.
This isn't a misdemeanor charge.
Right.
This isn't just a single incident. We're talking about, serious crimes with potentially really long-lasting impacts on these alleged victims.
Yeah.
And the scope of this whole alleged enterprise, the fact that this has potentially been going on for years,
right,
if not decades. I mean, that adds a whole other layer of complexity to all of this.
His legal team's still adamant about his innocence.
They are.
But it makes you wonder.
It does.
What if he is found guilty? What kind of precedent does that set?
I mean, a guilty verdict would be huge.
Right.
Not just in Hollywood. I mean, it would send the message that we're serious about holding people accountable for their actions.
Right.
Regardless of their wealth, their status, their influence, any of that.
It's a lot to process, that's for sure.
It is.
As we try to kind of wrap our heads around all of this. What's the one takeaway you really want our listener to leave with after this deep dive?
I think this case really highlights just how important it is to believe survivors. To create an environment where people feel safe to come forward.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, for years, these accusations were silenced.
Right.
And it highlights how difficult it can be for people to confront powerful figures.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that justice, true justice, requires us to amplify the voices of those who've been marginalized, who've been silenced.
It's easy to get caught up in the headlines, the money, the celebrity, all that, but there are real human lives at the heart of this.
Absolutely.
People whose lives have been allegedly impacted by these actions.
And it's a reminder for all of us to really take a look at the dynamics of power and influence.
Yeah.
And not just in Hollywood, in all aspects of our lives, in our society.
A lot to think about.
A lot to think about.